The wind swept gently across the rolling green hills of the English countryside, carried with it the faint scent of hay and wildflowers. In the distance, the outline of a horse stood against the fading orange glow of the evening sky. His name was Ashen, a tall gray stallion with wise, sorrowful eyes that seemed to hold the weight of memories too old for an animal to carry. To the villagers, Ashen was just another horse, an old creature wandering the meadows near the abandoned farm on the edge of town. But to those who knew the story, he was more than that. He was the horse that remembered his master. Years earlier, the farm had been alive with laughter and work. Children's voices rang in the yard. Chickens clucked, and the rhythmic thud of boots echoed from the stables. At the heart of it all was Thomas Whitaker, a kind-hearted farmer in his 50s, whose life revolved around the land and his animals. But among all the creatures, Ashen was his favorite. Thomas had raised him from a foal, feeding him from his own hands when the mother mare had died. "You'll be strong one day, lad," he would whisper, patting the soft muzzle of the young horse. "You'll run like the wind." And Ashen did. He grew into a magnificent stallion, his coat shining like silver in the sun. Children from the village loved to see him gallop across the fields. Yet it wasn't just his beauty or speed that made him special. It was the unspoken bond he shared with Thomas. When Thomas walked into the stable, Ashen would whinny softly, stamping his hooves with excitement. When Thomas was tired, the horse would stand still, lowering his head so his master could lean against him for comfort. They were not just man and horse. They were companions, soul-bound in a way that few could understand. But life in England was changing. News spread of war, and soon Thomas's only son, Edward, was called to fight. The farm that once thrived with warmth and laughter grew quiet. Thomas worked the land alone, and Ashen became his silent comfort. Every evening, Thomas would walk to the stable after finishing his chores. He would brush Ashen's coat slowly, speaking softly. "Your Edward will come back," he whispered, as if trying to convince himself. "He'll ride you one day, lad, strong and proud." But Edward never returned. A letter came, wrapped in official seals and words that broke Thomas's heart. His son had died in the trenches of France. For days, Thomas didn't speak. He sat in the stable beside Ashen, tears running down his face, hands trembling as he stroked the horse's mane. The village mourned with him, but grief has a way of isolating a man. Thomas grew older, weaker, and lonelier. His farm became harder to manage, and yet he never gave up, not while Ashen was still there. The horse was his anchor in a world that had crumbled around him. The seasons passed. Fields turned from green to gold to white with snow, and Ashen remained by his side. One particularly harsh winter, the snow fell heavier than ever. The fields turned white, the barn doors froze, and food became scarce. Villagers often worried about Thomas living alone, but when they visited, they always found him in the stable, bundled in his coat, sitting beside Ashen. One night, as the storm raged outside, Thomas leaned against Ashen's neck and whispered, "If I don't make it through this winter, promise me you'll remember me, lad. Don't forget me." Ashen nickered softly, brushing his nose against Thomas's shoulder. That was the last winter Thomas lived. One morning, the villagers found him in his small farmhouse chair, eyes closed, a faint smile on his lips, as if he had fallen asleep peacefully. After Thomas's death, the farm was abandoned. The land was too costly to maintain, and the house was left to crumble. But Ashen remained. The villagers tried to bring him into other stables, but he refused to settle. He broke fences, whinnied through night, and always returned to the old farm. It was as though he was waiting. Every evening, Ashen would stand at the stable door, eyes fixed on the horizon. He would whinny at dusk, the way he once did when Thomas came to brush him. On cold nights, he lay down in the straw of the empty barn, curling up as if Thomas might appear beside him at any moment. Years passed. Ashen grew older. His once shiny coat dulled, his steps slowed. But the memory of his master never faded. He stayed loyal to the farm, to the stable, to the place where he had shared his life with the man he loved. The villagers often said, "That horse is waiting for Thomas. He'll never leave until his master comes for him." One summer evening, when the sky glowed pink and gold, Ashen wandered into the field where Thomas had once plowed. The wind rustled the grass, and for a moment it seemed as though time had folded back on itself. He lifted his head, ears pricking forward, eyes shining as if he saw something no one else could. Some villagers swore they heard a faint voice on the wind. Others said they saw Ashen's ears twitch, his body quiver, and his tail swish, as though his master had called him one last time. With a gentle sigh, Ashen lay down in the grass. He did not rise again. The villagers buried him beside the stable, under the oak tree where Thomas had once rested. They placed a wooden marker with simple words, Ashen, the horse that remembered his master. Years later, children in the village would gather by the old farm and listen to the story told by their grandparents. They learned about Thomas, the kind farmer, about Edward who never came home, and about the horse who never forgot the one who loved him. Ashen's loyalty became legend. His grave became a place where people came to reflect, to leave flowers, and to remember that love, whether human or animal, never truly dies. Even now, when the wind moves through fields of that forgotten farm, some say you can still hear the sound of hooves and a man's gentle laughter, echoing softly across the countryside.